The Tongo Tongo ambush was a tragic incident that took place on October 4, 2017 in the West African country of Niger. It was an operation carried out by a joint patrol of Nigerian and American soldiers that ended in a deadly ambush by a local militant group. The region of Tongo Tongo, located near the border with Mali, is known for its instability due to the presence of various extremist groups. The U.S. Special Forces already had experience in operations in Niger, as they had already been there in 2016. For most of 2017, the Special Forces were in the U.S. and were planning for another deployment. When they finally arrived in Niger in September, only half of them had been through group exercises. They focused on training the Nigerian Anti-Terrorist and Reconnaissance Squad, and they went on 2 field missions together before they found themselves in a deadly ambush. On October 3, 2017, 11 U.S. personnel consisting of 8 U.S. Special Forces operators of the 3rd Special Forces Group, 2 support, and an intelligence contractor accompanied by 35 Nigerian personnel, left their camp near the town of Awam at dawn. The Americans traveled in 2 technicals and an unarmored Toyota Land Cruiser, while the Nigerians traveled in 5 similar vehicles. They drove north along sandy roads through a monotonous, flat, and desert landscape for several hours. Their task was to locate and capture or kill Doundo Shefu, a commander in the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara, also known as the ISGS. After reaching the indicated region, however, they realized that the jihadist leader and his people were nowhere to be found. They decided to start heading back to base in the evening, but they suddenly received very reliable information about the new whereabouts of the jihadists. So they turned back, and on October 4th early in the morning, they found a recently abandoned campsite. Upon observing the campsite, they found warm ashes inside of a fire pit, but the jihadists were gone. Once again, empty-handed, the soldiers headed for the base. Due to the unplanned extension of the patrol, the Nigerian soldiers ran out of water, so the American commander ordered them to deviate from the route and stop at the Tongo Tango settlement. It was also decided to hold an impromptu meeting with the local tribal elders. Conversations with the elders dragged on. It was approaching noon. The American commander was impatient, but he did not want to show them disrespect. The commandos who were on watch became concerned when they saw 2 guys on motorcycles who left the settlement at high speed and drove out into the desert. The tension was growing. At 11:40, they managed to set off from the settlement. The convoy was able to travel about 110 yards when the trap was sprung. Gunshots echoed through the air and shells started striking the rear vehicles of the convoy. Shots were fired from the buildings on the outskirts of the village and the grove surrounding the marshy pond. Eventually, the convoy commander gave the order to halt. All soldiers got out from their vehicles and began returning fire. Command was notified via radio about the engagement with the enemy. Although the situation appeared manageable, the soldiers often found themselves in skirmishes, typically resulting in a brief exchange of gunfire, followed by the attackers retreating. The jihadists were reluctant to engage in direct combat with well-equipped and well-trained American forces. As one of the Green Berets and several Nigerians began to flank the attackers hidden in the brush, he was surprised to see a significant additional jihadist force coming from the desert, a squad armed with pickup trucks with machine guns and mortars. The Americans quickly realized that the enemy had a significant advantage. He immediately returned with his companions to the stopped convoy and ordered a retreat. Most of the American and Nigerian soldiers quickly loaded themselves into 4 vehicles. 3 U.S. Green Berets stayed behind and continued firing while using one of the SUVs as cover. They were Brian Black, Jeremiah Johnson, and Dustin Wright. Staff Sergeant Dustin Wright jumped into the vehicle and slowly moved it forward. The other 2 soldiers, Staff Sergeant Brian Black and Staff Sergeant Jeremiah Johnson, remained covered behind the vehicle while they continued firing. Unfortunately, Staff Sergeant Brian Black was hit and killed. Wright then jumped out of the vehicle and tried helping Black. The fire became so heavy that Johnson and Wright had no chance of getting back into the car. They made a desperate decision and rushed forward, using the vehicle as protection from the bullets. Johnson was hit after running about 300 feet. He fell to the ground and could no longer move. Wright rushed to Johnson, but he was hit himself. According to the Pentagon's report, their wounds were fatal, and they passed at around 12 noon. American and Nigerian forces regrouped at a secondary position. When they realized that Black, Jeremiah Johnson, and Wright were missing, 2 team members volunteered to go back and find them. As they approached the ambush site, they engaged and killed several militants, but had to retreat due to heavy enemy fire. The remaining team members and partner forces were overwhelmed by enemy fire at the secondary position. They quickly entered their vehicles and fled the area at high speed. However, during this chaotic maneuver, Sergeant LaDavid Johnson and 2 Nigerian soldiers became separated from the rest of the team. Believing he had made it back to his vehicle, the others left the area. Unable to enter his vehicle due to concentrated enemy fire, LaDavid had no choice but to escape on foot with the 2 Nigerians. Tragically, both Nigerian soldiers were killed by enemy fire. LaDavid continued running through the open desert. LaDavid sought refuge under a dense thorny tree and fought back against the advancing enemy. A vehicle with a mounted machine gun stopped about 110 yards from his position, pinning him down. LaDavid Johnson was killed by small arms fire. Initial reports suggested he may have been captured and executed, but subsequent findings revealed that he was found lying on his back with his arms by his sides. The surviving American and Nigerian soldiers found themselves crammed into the last remaining car, desperately fleeing. Once safe, they established a defensive perimeter and began providing crucial medical aid to the wounded. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the team radioed in that they were on the verge of being overwhelmed. Responding to the distress call, French Mirage jets were deployed, arriving at the scene roughly 30 minutes later, and performed supersonic passes, deterring the pursuers. Within a remarkably short span of 3 to 4 hours following the initial call for support, a highly trained French Special Operations team arrived at the scene. A total of 4 American soldiers were killed that day. Staff Sergeant Brian Black, Staff Sergeant Jeremiah Johnson, Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, and Staff Sergeant Dustin Wright. Additionally, 5 Nigerian soldiers were also killed in the attack. 8 Nigerians and 2 U.S. soldiers, including the team commander, were wounded and were transferred to the Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. In the closing moments of this video, we pay homage to the brave souls who faced unimaginable challenges with unwavering courage.